Hey guys, welcome to another Mindset Moment with Adam. I'm glad you're here with me today. I want to talk a little bit about stealing. As we know, there are many rules and commandments in the Bible, especially the Old Testament. The first part of the Old Testament is called the Law, as in God gave His people in order to show them how to live godly lives. Some are there to help us from ourselves. Like, for instance, the commandment on do not eat blood. Do not eat flesh, blood in it. Today we can understand there are dangers in eating raw food. There are dangers in eating blood. And we understand that. That's why there's a reason there's no such thing as chicken sashimi. We don't eat raw chicken. There are also some laws that are specifically designed for the Jewish people of the Old Testament that are no longer needed today. Today, in the post-Messiah age where Jesus has come and established order. Like, for instance, the ceremonial rules for going to worship, about how to be clean and those type of things. They're not necessary anymore. Or civil laws for disputes in the Old Testament time period. Those, again, are not needed anymore. But then there are the ones that transcend time. And the ones we all know about. Biblical rules that we have all heard and some even follow daily. I'm referring to the Ten Commandments. These 10 laws given to by Moses from God on the mountaintop after Moses led the people of Israel from slavery in Egypt. These are a summary page, or the condensed version of the Old Testament law system. The Ten Commandments have a deep history with many people groups throughout the history of our world. Countries, and even America has had these in the schools and government buildings for a short time. And while we're not going to talk about all 10 today, no. I think there's one that we assume we understand completely, but when I look at it more, there's a lot more to it. Today I wanted to spend some time looking at a simple but deep and important command: do not steal. The Ten Commandments are found in Exodus chapter 20. We're looking at good old number 8, and that is found in Exodus 20:15. The verse reads, simply, "You shall not steal." So when we think of stealing, what comes to mind? Someone breaking into your house? Taking money at a gunpoint? Nabbing the Declaration of Independence? Stealing is identified as taking without permission or legal rights and not without intent to return it. Okay? Seems pretty clear cut. God's law and man's rules make it black and white. Do not take something without permission and keep it. So then why do we need to take a closer look if this is such a black and white issue? Because there are a lot of areas where it's not clear or well understood as we think. We are stealing and not realizing it. And to make things worse still, stealing is the opposite of what we need to be doing, and that's giving. I want to look at a few examples to help understand what I'm saying. The first is simple: stealing the future. The Bible talks a lot about a person's future, their livelihood. The job you had provides for yourself, your family, your future. That has not changed much over the last few thousand years. But theft can be of the future. And I'm not talking about just life. We need to not steal from the future. Look at me with Deuteronomy 22 to help understand. Verse 6 says, "If a bird's nest happens to be before you along the way, in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, with mothers sitting on their young or on the eggs. You shall not take the mother with the young. You shall surely let the mother go and take the young for yourself, that it may be well with you and that you may prolong your days. Okay, this enters us into a gray area of stealing. Taking from someone their future or future production. In this example from the Old Testament, the subject of future stealing, we see the question of what to do with the young of an animal. And this is a big deal. Something that hunting and agricultural farming communities would understand and would have this type of question. As in, do you kill the mom bird? The chicks? The eggs? All of them? None of them? What? They were to be wise policies in the procurement of life's necessities, because resources are finite and could be depleted to the point of non-existence. We understand that nowadays. Just look at what the buffalo almost became. And in the case of birds, one could take the eggs or the chicks for food, but not the mother, because hers was to preserve, her life was to be preserved, so that the offspring could had more for future consumption. To kill the mother would effectively, hard word, have cut off any prospect of having more, having future. And this is not the only example that the Bible gives. Exodus 22, 1 through 15 has multiple examples of stealing from the future. I'm just going to look at two in verse 5 and 6. Verse 5 says, if a man causes a field or vineyard to be grazed and lets loose his animals, and it feeds in another man's field, he shall make restitutions from the best of his own field and the best of his own vineyard. If a fire breaks out and catches in thorns, so that stacked grain and standing grain or field is consumed, he who kindled fire shall surely make restitution. Okay. Stealing is wrong. I think we understand that clearly. We teach our children, we teach the next generation that clearly. But the gray area enters into stealing potential future or future profits and the legality of it. The modern day example could be stealing from your job or from a small business. We could take a nice big thick stack of the paper plates home from work. You know, the good kind. The really thick, good kind. Or we're out of pens at home. You know who has pens? Work. Post-it notes. Do you think your boss would miss a few dozen missing ones? They are a rich company. I'm sure they won't mind. This is sinful. This is still stealing, no matter how trivial it may be, because it's taking future profits away from this company, this person, because of silly, selfish reasons, as in you want to have paper plates. You don't need them. You have dishes at home. You just don't want to wash them. And while this does not stack up on the theft scale, it's still stealing, because it's taking away the livelihood of a person or a business. Have I done this? Full confession? Yeah, I have. There's been many a Taco Bell sauce packet that has been taken, or Cracker Barrel or Pizza Hut wall decorations. And yeah, paper plates. Yeah. Was I wrong? Yeah. Did I steal from the future of these people, of these companies? Yes. And the Bible calls that sin. Sin is something that God does not tolerate, and we deserve to be punished for it, because the Bible tells us that the punishment for sin is death and eternal separation from God forever. It does not matter what family we are from, how kind we are, what race we are, what gender we are, or even how decent we are. One sin, one transgression makes us no longer meeting God's standard. But out of God's perfect, generous, and great love for us, we can be forgiven. The Lord Jesus came to earth, died on a cross, and took the punishment for our sin. Why? Because he loves you. Simple and that. Because of his death and resurrection, we can be forgiven forever and spend eternity in perfection with God in heaven. If we ask for forgiveness and admit that we are not perfect, that we are a sinner, and follow God. You can do it right now. Stealing from the future from a person, that could be the future income, future resources, as we have seen, is one way the Bible tells us of what stealing is. Another way is stealing the love of your neighbor. Look at me at Deuteronomy chapter 22. This time we're going to go verses 1 through 4. It reads, "You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep going astray and hide yourself from them. You shall certainly bring them back to your brother. And if your brother is not near you, or if you do not know him, then you shall bring it to your house, and it shall remain with you until your brother seeks it. Then you shall restore it to him. You shall surely do the same with a donkey. You shall do it with his garment, with any lost thing of your brother's, which he has lost, and you have found. You shall do likewise. You must not hide yourself. You shall not see your brother's donkey or ox fall along the road, and hide yourself from them. You shall surely help him lift them up." The example Moses gave us in the law shows us that by doing nothing, by doing this bare minimum and pretending we didn't see any wrong, we didn't see the struggle of our neighbor, of this other person, we're stealing. By not doing all that we can to help this neighbor, this other person, to make up for the loss, for the difficulty, we're stealing from them. We're not helping them with their lost items. And, most importantly, we're not loving them. This simple example of stealing shows by example how a believer in God should act, simply with love. Showing to love our neighbor, or any person on this blue-green marble of earth, is how God tells us we should live and act. And it's the opposite of stealing, and that's giving. For instance, look at Mark 12 with me. Jesus is asked, "What is the first commandment of all?" Jesus answered him, "The first commandment of all is, 'Hear, O Israel, the Lord.'" Sorry, that scared me. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second like it is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." The law about lost livestock is very obscure, but was a contrite expression of the eternal moral principle to love your neighbor, or to do what you would have them to do to you, the golden rule. This section from the law in Deuteronomy 22 refers not to primarily someone taking someone else's lost animal, but rather to the natural tendency that we all have to ignore it. Because helping would mean extra time involved, labor, and all the difficulties that come with work and helping somebody. Stealing is not always easy as we think it is in terms of correctness. Stealing could be taking something that is not yours, taking future possessions or income, maybe even stealing the uses out of an item that you break. Stealing is a dangerous path of sin that we can take, but there's hope. God calls us to not steal, as we saw in Exodus 20, but instead to be generous. Give back instead of take. Giving back and being generous and being able to help people when they are out of options, when they are in need, and when temptation to steal is greatest, is what we should be doing. Period. Being generous and giving back instead means giving back to the people around us and to God. Paul tells us in Ephesians 4 that we should work hard so that we do not steal. Ephesians 4:28 tells us, "Let him who stole steal no longer. Rather let him labor, working with his hands what is good, that he may have something to give to what is need." Instead of stealing, we gotta work hard. And working hard in Greek here is kapaito. Kapaito. This is a command, not just like, you could work hard. No, work hard. And it obviously means the obvious, to labor. But there's more. Work hard until we are weary. Extreme fatigue. This is not just, it's close enough to 8 hours, I'm good enough, I'm going home. No. Work as hard as we can, as best as we can, every single time. Because the temptation to steal is going to still be there, guys. It's never going to go away. It's always going to be temptation passing through our minds. Am I still tempted to grab 30 extra Taco Bell hot sauces for my taco and around 2 inches of napkins, just in case, to be prepared for all situations? Yeah. Instead, God tells us that we should be working hard so that we can earn money on our own, so that we don't have to steal. And so that we can have extra, so that we can be generous with, to help other people, and to give back to God, the one who gave it to us in the first place. In Leviticus 27, it reads, "And all the tithe of the land, whether the seed of the land or the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy to the Lord. If a man wants at all to redeem any of his tithe, he shall bring 1/5 to it. And concerning the tithe of the herd, or the flocks, or whatever passes under the rod, 1/10 shall be holy to the Lord. He shall not inquire whether it is good or bad, nor shall he exchange it. And if he exchange it at all, then both exchanges shall be holy, it shall not be redeemed." I'll bring this up because this talks a lot about tithing. And there are many places in the Bible that talks about how we are to give back to God. And that's called tithing. Tithing is a small percentage, as we saw here, 10% of our income back to God, back to the ministries of the church. And that involves money, time, talent, tithing of all of them. Be generous with all of them. Not to steal is a clear, cut and dry commandment from God. But there are times in life where you see the gray area and you are left to decide it upon yourself. Is this right? Is this wrong? What do I do? As we talk about, do napkins count? What about pens? What about those little tiny ibuprofen medicine that are in those med kits that they put all around schools and businesses? Is it wrong to pop those pills out of there just to take them for your own self? Kind of a very specific example that I've used, isn't it? The list goes on. But as many of us have looked today at stealing, Stealing is a wide and broad issue. I know I've dealt with it a few times in my life. From the stealing of baseball cards at Walmart from when I was younger to the stealing of little tiny things at work or at a business. Just 'cause. But it's something that we all deal with. We all deal with the temptation to steal in different manners. And it's very clear that it's still a sin. And no matter how little it is, the impact is still great. Instead of stealing, God calls us to work hard and be generous with what we have so that we can be a good example to the people around us. So that leaves us today with the simple questions. How can you transform your sinful habits, like stealing, instead to work hard, to do honest work, and help other people? How can you show love of your other people by doing instead of ignoring them, instead of stealing their future? Do you have a church family that can help you? Do you have a group of Christians that can help you? Can you be a giver and not a taker? And how do you do that? All right, guys. See you next time.